In the depths of Caelid's rotting heart, I discovered something that changed everything. The Scarlet Rot doesn't just kill you, it makes you want to die, makes you crave the transformation from human into something far worse. This is what really happens when the rot takes hold, a confession from someone who's already lost. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel. But only if it truly resonates with you. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just about a video game disease. It's about the moment you realize you're becoming the very thing you feared, and worse, the moment you stop wanting to fight it. You want to know what the Scarlet Rot really is? Not the stories they tell in Leyndell's golden halls. Not the warnings carved into Caelid's border stones. The truth. The wet, crawling truth that's eating me from the inside as I speak these words. I can feel it moving beneath my skin, even now. Tiny threads of crimson working through my veins like worms through soil. Started 3 days ago. Just a scratch, I told myself. Just a scratch from a rotted dog near the swamp of Aeonia. The beast's flesh was already falling off in chunks, maggots spilling from wounds that wouldn't close. Should have known better. Should have listened to the merchant who screamed at me to stay away from anything touched by the rot's kiss. But you don't understand until it's in you, until it's part of you. Let me tell you how it begins. Not with pain, but with sweetness. That's the cruelest joke of all. The first sign isn't agony or fever. It's a taste of honey on your tongue that won't go away. Everything tastes like honey mixed with copper coins. I thought I was going mad, sucking on pebbles trying to clear my palate. The merchant I'd saved my coin with looked at me with such pity when I asked if his dried meat had gone sweet. He knew. They all know the signs in Caelid. The scratch on my arm, barely deep enough to draw blood, had already started to change by sunset. The skin around it turned the colour of autumn leaves, beautiful in its own diseased way. Orange fading to deep scarlet, spreading outward in perfect spirals like some artist had painted them there. I remember touching it, mesmerized. The flesh was soft, too soft, like overripe fruit about to burst. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know if I'm the only one who feels this way. That night, I dreamed of Malenia, not the Malenia of legend, the undefeated swordswoman, the Blade of Miquella. I dreamed of Malenia, the child, crying, tears of blood in a garden that wilted at her touch. In my fever dream, she spoke to me. We are siblings now, you and I, children of the same red mother. When I woke, my bedroll was soaked through with sweat that smelled of rotting flowers. You need to understand something about the Scarlet Rot. It's not a disease, not like the flux or the wasting sickness. It's older than the Erd Tree, older than the Golden Order's lies about cosmic harmony. The rot is the touch of an outer god, a force from beyond the stars that even Marika couldn't fully contain. They sealed it once, long ago, deep beneath the earth where the lake of rot festers like an infected wound in the world's flesh. But sealing something doesn't kill it, it just makes it patient. Malenia carries it like a crown of thorns, passed down through her cursed blood, born with it, raised with it, learned to dance with it on the edge of a blade. They say she's never known defeat, but that's not true. She loses to the rot every single day, holds it back through will alone. Until Radahn. Until she made the choice to bloom. I've seen the aftermath of that choice. Travelled through what's left of Caelid after their battle. The ground itself is sick there, breathing out spores with every wind. The sky turned the colour of an infected wound, pressing down heavy and wet. Trees grow, but they grow wrong, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Bark weeping red sap that burns when it touches healthy flesh. The dogs and crows grew huge, muscles bulging with tumours, but they don't die. The rot won't. Let them die. By the second day, I understood why. The infection had spread up my arm by then, following the lines of my veins like it knew exactly where to go. Each heartbeat pushed it further. I tried to cut it out, heated my blade until it glowed and pressed it against the infected flesh. The smell, Gods! The smell was sweet, like caramelized sugar mixed with burning meat. But when I looked at the wound, the rot was already growing back, knitting the flesh together wrong. My fingers had started to swell, joints creaking with every movement. The fingernails turned black, then fell off entirely, replaced by something that looked more like tree bark than human flesh. The worst part, I could feel everything. The rot doesn't numb you like frostbite. It keeps your nerves singing, makes sure you experience every single change. When the skin on my palms split open and tiny white flowers started to push through, each one no bigger than a grain of rice, I felt each petal unfold. They were beautiful. I wanted to show someone, anyone, these perfect little blooms growing from my flesh. That's when I knew I was starting to lose my mind. The rot doesn't just eat your body. It whispers to you, shows you things. Visions of Caelid before the corruption, fields of gold that rivaled Limgrave's beauty. Then the meteor, Radahn pulling a star from the sky in his gravitational embrace, and with it came the seeds of infection. Or maybe that's wrong. Maybe the rot was always there, sleeping, and the battle just woke it up. The stories change depending on who's dying when they tell them. I met another infected on the road yesterday, further along than me. His entire lower body had transformed into something between flesh and wood, roots digging into the ground with every step. He couldn't stop walking. Said if he stopped, the roots would dig too deep and he'd become another of those screaming trees you see in Caelid's heart. He laughed when he said it, spores puffing from his mouth with each chuckle. "You're fresh," he told me, looking at my arm. "Still fighting it. That's good. Fight as long as you can. But when you feel the first bloom coming, when your chest starts to swell and crack, find somewhere beautiful to plant yourself, somewhere the wind can carry your seeds far from here." I asked him about Malenia, about how she controlled it for so long. He stopped laughing then. "She doesn't control it," he said. "She made a deal with it. Every victory she wins, the rot gets. A piece of her. Every swing of her blade spreads invisible spores. She's not the Blade of Miquella. She's the rot's favorite daughter, whether she admits it or not. And when she bloomed against Radahn, when she finally gave in and let the scarlet flower open, she doomed us all. Caelid is just the beginning. The rot wants the whole of the lands between. He left me there on the road, roots dragging furrows, in the dirt behind him. I watched until he disappeared into the red mist that hangs over everything near Caelid. That night, the fever truly began. You've had fevers before, I'm sure. The kind that makes you kick off blankets, that turns your dreams strange. This isn't that. The rot's fever burns cold, ice in your veins while your skin radiates heat like a forge. I stripped naked in the darkness, rolling in the dirt, trying to find relief. My infected arm had swollen to twice its size, the skin stretched tight and translucent. I could see things moving underneath, not blood anymore, but something thick and golden like tree sap. When I pressed my ear against the swollen flesh, I heard whispers. Not words exactly, but something older than language. The voice of the outer god of rot, speaking in spores and decay, telling me secrets about the nature of life itself. Life, it whispered, is just controlled rot. Everything that lives carries the seeds of its own destruction. The Golden Order pretends otherwise, pretends that golden light and eternal trees mean eternal life. But even Marika knew better. Why else would she hide the rune of death? Why else would she fear what grows in the dark, wet places of the world? By morning, my arm had split open along the length like a seed pod. No blood came out, just that golden sap and clouds of spores that hung in the air like morning mist. Inside the wound, I could see structures that weren't muscle or bone anymore. They looked like roots and branches, all twisted together in patterns that made my eyes water to follow. And deep in the center, something pulsed with its own heartbeat. A red flower bud, no bigger than my thumb, waiting to bloom. I should have cut the arm off then, Should have taken my blade and severed it at the shoulder before the infection could spread further. But when I raised the knife, my infected hand grabbed my wrist. Not me controlling it, the rot itself, protecting its garden. That's what we are to it, you understand. Gardens. Fertile soil for something ancient and patient to grow in. I thought about Millicent then, as my body betrayed me piece by piece. You might have heard of her, one of Malenia's daughters, or maybe Malenia herself, split into pieces when she bloomed. Born from the Scarlet Aeonia, the massive flower that erupted from Malenia's body when she finally gave in against Radahn. Millicent carries the rot too, but she fights it with unalloyed gold needle, Miquella's final gift to his sister before he disappeared into his cocoon dreams. If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me. In the comments, I'll be reading them. The needle. They say it can halt the rot's advance, keep the infection from reaching your heart. Miquella crafted it from his own unalloyed gold, the purest essence of order without the greater will's influence. A needle to sew shut the door between our world and the rot god's domain. But needles break, needles get lost, and there was only ever one. The third day, my legs gave out, not from weakness, but from transformation. The bones in my feet had started to branch, toes extending into root-like structures that tried to burrow into whatever ground I stood on. Walking became agony as these new roots tore free with each step, leaving bloody furrows in my wake. I crawled the last miles to the shaded castle, where they say those touched by rot gather in their final days. The castle stands at the border between Altus and Matgelmir, shrouded in poisonous mist. But poison and rot are sisters, you see. Both are weapons of the ancient world, from before the Erdtree imposed its golden order. The servants of rot can walk through poison like morning dew. My transformed body drank it in, processed it into more fuel for the infection. Inside the castle, I found others like me, some further along, human shapes barely recognizable under carpets of fungal growth. Others fresh, still crying human tears as their bodies rebelled. We don't speak much. What's there to say? We're all becoming the same thing in the end. But there's one who talks, an old woman whose entire left side has become a garden of tiny scarlet flowers. She claims she was there when Malenia first bloomed, serving in Radahn's army when the two demigods clashed. The sky turned red, she told me, her voice like wind through dying leaves. Not blood red, flower red, petal red, the scarlet bloom, opened from Malenia's body like she was a seed that had been waiting all her life to split apart. The beauty of it. You can't imagine the terrible beauty. Soldiers stopped fighting just to stare. And in that moment of awe, we breathed in our doom. She showed me maps, drawings made in various stages of her infection, the spread of rot from Caelid's heart, the patterns it follows. It's not random. The rot has intelligence, has plans. It follows ley lines of power, seeks out places where the Erdtree's influence is weak, the shaded regions, the underground rivers, the battlefields where death has loosened reality's grip. It's happened before, she said, pointing to ancient texts stolen from Raya Lucaria. Before the Erdtree, before Marika's age. The world was a garden of rot once. Everything grew and died and grew again in endless cycles. The greater will imposed stasis, golden, eternal, unchanging. But the rot god remembers the garden. It wants it back. My chest started cracking yesterday. Not breaking, cracking like dried mud, lines spreading across my skin in geometric patterns. When I breathe deep, I can feel something shifting inside, rearranging my organs to make room. The old woman says it's the final stage before the first bloom. My body is becoming a vessel, a vase for something beautiful and terrible to grow from. She showed me the others who had reached this stage. They stand in the castle's courtyard, planted in neat rows, like a garden. Their bodies have split open from sternum to navel, massive scarlet flowers blooming from their chests. They're still alive. You can see their eyes moving, tracking the sun across the sky. But they don't speak anymore. Don't need to. They're part of something larger now, a network of roots and spores that stretches all the way back to Malenia herself. She's the queen of this garden, the old woman explained. Every infection traces back to her. When she dreams in her cocoon at the Haligtree's roots, we all dream with her. When she wakes, she trailed off, but I understood. When Malenia wakes, when she blooms for the third and final time, we'll all bloom with her. Every infected soul, across the lands between, will split open at once, releasing clouds of spores that will blot out the sun. The Cleanrot Knights know this. That's why they serve her with such devotion despite their own infections. They've accepted what they'll become. They see it as transcendence, not death. To rot is to return to the primordial garden, to become part of something that existed before gods and orders and golden trees. But I'm not ready for transcendence. Not yet. Phase 3. The final garden. That's why I'm recording this. Scratching these words into parchment with fingers that barely bend anymore, that leak golden sap with every movement. Someone needs to know what's coming. Someone needs to understand that Caelid isn't quarantined. It's just the first garden of many. The cracks in my chest have deepened since yesterday. When I look down, I can see light filtering through the fissures. Not sunlight, but something red and pulsing from within. It has its own rhythm, slower than my heartbeat, patient as mountains eroding. Sometimes I catch myself breathing in time with it, and for those moments, the pain stops. The fear stops. Everything makes perfect sense. But then I remember faces. A sister in Limgrave who used to braid flowers in her hair. A friend who died holding the line at Redmayne Castle, still believing Radahn could be saved. Human faces, human memories that the rot can't quite digest. They're my anchors, keeping me from letting go completely. Though each hour, they fade a little more, replaced by older memories that aren't mine. I remember being a spore, drifting on winds that predate the Erdtree. I remember the first infection, the first garden, when the world was young and wet and everything rotted back into everything else. No, that's not my memory. That's the rot showing me its history, trying to convince me that this is natural, that this is right. The old woman died this morning. No, died is wrong. She transformed, transcended, became. I watched it happen. She'd been preparing for days, positioning herself in the courtyard's center where the morning light would hit just right. When the first ray touched her face, she smiled. The cracks in her chest spread all at once, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. The sound, gods, the sound was like celery snapping, wet and organic. Her ribs opened outward like fingers, and, from the cavity of her chest, the flower emerged, not beautiful. Not at first. It pushed out covered in fluids, petals wrapped tight like a fist. But as it met the air, as it tasted sunlight for the first time, it bloomed, layer after layer of scarlet petals, unfurling, each one perfect, each one deadly. The spores came next, clouds of them glowing in the morning light like golden snow. I breathed them in, couldn't help it. They tasted like honey and copper and something else. Memories of battles I never fought, loves I never lost. The old woman's memories, scattered on the wind for any infected to inhale and incorporate. That's how the garden grows, you see, not just in body, but in mind. We're all becoming the same organism, the same vast network of root and rot. Her eyes are still open, still aware. I can see her in there, trapped behind pupils dilated so wide they look black. But she's not suffering. That's the worst part. Through our connection, I can feel what she feels. Ecstasy. Pure, overwhelming ecstasy, as every nerve fires with the pleasure of transformation. The rot doesn't want us to suffer. It wants us to want this. Commander O'Neill understood. That's why he led his men into Caelid even after the bloom, even knowing what awaited them. He'd seen Malenia fight, seen the grace in her movements despite the rot eating her from within. He wanted that power, that connection to something greater than the Golden Order's sterile light. His men followed because soldiers always follow, but also because they too had glimpsed something in the scarlet bloom, a promise of transformation rather than mere death. I've seen his soldiers in the swamp, what's left of them. They still hold formation, still respond to his commands, but they're more plant than person now. Roots for legs, branches for arms, flowers blooming from empty eye sockets. They guard the commander as he conducts some ritual in the swamp's heart, trying to accelerate his own transformation, to bloom as Malenia bloomed. He doesn't understand that you can't force it. The bloom comes when the rot decides you're ready, when you've been seasoned just right. I'm almost ready now. The bud in my chest has started to swell. I can feel it pressing against my lungs, making each breath shorter than the last. When I cough, petals come up. Small ones, premature, but still deadly. I've been burning them, watching them curl and blacken in the flame. Each one could start a new infection if it found fertile soil. Each one carries a piece of me, ready to grow into something that remembers my shape but isn't me anymore. Gowry would call this beautiful. The old sage who studies the rot, who sees it as evolution rather than infection. He believes the Scarlet Rot is the universe trying to correct itself, to return to a state of constant change after too long under the Golden Order's stasis. He infected Millicent on purpose, wanted to see if Malenia's daughters could bloom like their mother, if the rot could be inherited and refined across generations. But Millicent fought it, with Miquella's needle, with sheer will, with the help of a tarnished who saw her as human rather than infected. She died human, or close enough. That's the choice we have. Die fighting the rot, or live as part of it. Neither option ends well, but at least one leaves you as yourself. I won't have that luxury. The needle is lost, and my will erodes with each passing hour. Last night, I dreamed I was Malenia again. But this time, I understood her pain. Every victory she's ever won has been while fighting a war inside herself. Every perfect sword strike delivered while her body screamed to let go, to bloom, to become the garden. She's the strongest demigod, not because she's undefeated, but because she's held the rot back for so long. And when she finally gave in against Radahn, when she chose to bloom to match his strength, she didn't lose. She just stopped fighting the real war. The third bloom will be different. I can feel it in the network, in the roots that connect all of us infected. The third bloom won't be a choice or a desperate moment in battle. It will be an awakening. Malenia will open like a flower that's been waiting since the world's founding to unfold. And when she does, every piece of rot in the lands between will respond. The merchants know. That's why they've started fleeing Caelid's borders, why they whisper about red skies spreading west. The rot follows trade routes now, hidden in cargo, in the lungs of travelers who breathe too deep near the swamps. It's patient. It's inevitable. My fingers are failing now. The joints have locked, bark growing over the knuckles. This will be my last testimony, my final warning. Tomorrow, maybe tonight, the bloom will come. I'll stand in the garden with the others, my chest split open, a flower where my heart used to be, still aware, still me in some twisted way, but unable to speak, unable to warn anyone else. So let this record stand. The Scarlet Rot is not a disease. It's a god's finger pressing through the veil, transforming everything it touches into something ancient and terrible. We are gardens waiting to bloom, every one of us. And when Malenia wakes from her slumber at the Haligtree's roots, when she blooms for the third and final time, the world will remember what it was before Golden Order, before eternal trees, before the lies of everlasting life. The lands between will become a scarlet garden, beautiful and terrible, where everything rots and everything grows and nothing ever truly dies, just transforms into something that remembers being human but isn't anymore. I can feel my chest cracking now. The light inside is so beautiful, so warm. Maybe the old woman was right. Maybe this is transcendence.